already number one realtor.
Yes.
And try different wines.
What's your favorite wine? Red or white? Hold on, first.
Red.
Okay, all right.
I'm sophisticated.
I think a part of me was just like, y'all, we've been great. You're just now figuring it out, but we've been great. That's who we are. It's in our DNA.
To like do my Colossus Deadpool like impersonation, 1 or 2 moments, right? It's.
And I'm sitting there in my head going, I wonder if I can somehow sniff the traffic going from the armband. It's got to be talking to an API or something.
To the next cocktail, to the next conversation.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Cocktails, Code, and Conversation. Really excited for this episode because I got a special guest. But as you guys know, I say all my guests are special on this episode. But this one, he's kind of really special. Maybe more special than the other guests, but maybe not. It just depends. You'll see. I'm super, super excited to welcome Mark McClain to the podcast.
Thank you, David. It is a great pleasure to be here.
So for those of you that don't know, Mark McClain is the CEO of SailPoint Technologies, and it's a company that I used to work for way back when. And you know, when I put this pod together, there was a couple of people that I was like, okay, when I kind of get this going, I would love to kind of have on this, because the whole part of this pod was really just having like these conversations, right? Like the kind of real casual conversations where people really kind of get into stuff that you kind of really don't get sometimes. And you know, when I was at SailPoint and the times that we had a chance to just, you know, hang out with us, navigate, or wherever we were, I always just enjoyed our conversations, right? Just, and it could be about anything, whatever, you know,
Right.
books or things like that. And so I was like, Mark's going to be a really cool person to have. So this is kind of a good moment for me, because I was like, it was one of those things where, you know, you write a goal and you say, well, I think I want this to happen at some point. And so 3 seasons in, and it's happened. And so I'm super excited about this. And I will try and keep this as professional as possible, because what you guys already know about me is that I like to go off the cuff, and what you guys don't know is Mark kind of does too. So we're going to try and keep to a little bit of a schedule. Got some questions we want to get into, but obviously want to keep it the same format it's always been, which is just, you know, 2 people having a conversation and getting into some stuff. So with that, the first question I wanted to get into, and I know you get asked this a lot, right? You know, interview stuff like that, but just about like the journey of being an entrepreneur, right?
Mm.
And specifically, like I want to go back to like 99, 2000, right? So it's right after like Tivoli. You might have, I think that's about the time like you guys would have came out of Tivoli. You kind of
Right.
you got that entrepreneurship bug. Kind of take me
Right.
back to that time, and what's the, like, how does it get started? How does the idea start? Like, who's the first person you call? Like
Mm.
what was that part like? And then to where you guys are now.
Okay. Yeah, David, it's a little bit of a, well, I'd say an unusual story, except I've been around enough entrepreneurs now. They're all unusual, right? There's not
Right.
really, there's not like a single path here, right? We were, I'd about 10 years in big tech. I always called it, you know, 7 at IBM and 3 at HP earlier. And then I'd come to Tivoli. That some of you may not know, it's now a brand. I think it's still an independent brand inside of IBM, but Tivoli was this independent, just going public startup here in Austin, Texas. And this is 1995 when I came here. And I'm sure all of you know, Austin was not a place tech people were going in 1995, right? Like when I told friends in California I was moving here, they would say, Boston? I'm like, no, Austin. Texas? You know, they were like, what? Who goes to Texas? So that was what got me to Austin. And Tivoli proceeded to go public right as I got there on a much smaller number. It was the mid 90s, things were different.
Right.
And then within a year, it got acquired by IBM. But it blew up really well. Blew up as in positive, got big fast inside IBM. And so that was like a 5-year run. And I'd met some really great folks. And I'd learned more about that startup community because, well, Tivoli was growing big inside IBM. The core of the leadership team was a lot of these folks that had been there and either starting it or really early. And I'd never really seen that part of the entrepreneurial venture, right? Got kind of intrigued by it. A couple of buddies who were thinking we might do this together. And then David, you know, it's hard to put our minds back there, but this is like 1999 when the internet bubble was big. It hadn't
Right.
burst yet. Everybody and their brother was starting companies. It was just crazy, crazy times in the late 90s. So 4 of us got together and said, you know what? It's been a great run, but we're kind of ready to try this thing, right? But we
Right.
didn't know what we wanted to do. That's also not that uncommon. Kind of knew we wanted to stay in B2B big tech, but we didn't know exactly what we are going to do. and we had this conversation with some of the venture guys, specifically Austin Ventures, that had backed Tivoli, and sort of the conversation quickly got to, well, if you guys want to quit your jobs, we'll give you a little bit of salary, not what you've been making by then, kind of nice salaries at IBM, but enough that you don't worry about paying the bills, and you can kind of figure out what to do and pitch that. Pitch us your idea, and if we like it, we'll fund it because we like this team. We just, we don't know what you want to do yet. We're
Right.
like, okay, I guess we'll take the leap, get out of our jobs, started down this 6 month thing, David. And then, right, 2 months into that, 3 months into that, boom, the internet bubble blows up in like spring of 2000. And like, oh, maybe this wasn't a good idea. So the good news was, though, we were not like, what really blew up in that era was all this B2C eyeballs. Nobody ever knew how they were going to make money. They were just going to get a bunch of users on their website, right? And we were not those guys. We were guys who had grown up in enterprise class software, business to business. So we had started down the path of creating what ended up being, as you know, an identity management company called Waveset, that first
Right.
one. And that was still a really good thing to do, but it was just a lousy time to kind of be getting a company out of the chute. But we weathered it. And by the way, just to remind everybody what all happened in history, right? So we get through that year and a half, get some early seed, and then a Series A round, get going down the entrepreneur path, and then 9/11. Whoops, right? Crap. Like that was a kind of a bit of a jolt to the whole country and the economy, and everybody kind of regrouped. But then after that, it was kind of a normalish, good path for an entrepreneurial venture. We grew pretty fast, and then Sun Microsystems, folks, younger folks might even know Sun, but Sun was a pretty good tech company of that era, and they come along and bought the company. And so
Right.
that was a classic. Built a company, grew kind of fast, got bought out by a big tech company. Pretty common story. But to your point, I really had the entrepreneur bug after that. So one other of my founders from Waveset, Kevin, who Kevin
Yeah.
and I and Jackie, a third founder, kind of got SailPoint going about a year after we had kind of wrapped up at Sun, and thought it would be the same journey, if I'm really honest, right? Like, let's start a company, we'll raise some money, we'll build something for a few years, and some big tech company will buy us. And to be honest, I've divulged this now, that almost happened twice. We almost got bought a couple early points in that journey, and then the rest of the story. I'll shorthand it. Didn't happen. Took some private equity funding, which was kind of weird. Wasn't a typical path, but that happened. Kept growing. Finally got an opportunity to go public. Did that. The private equity guys came out of the business, and we've just been a classic public company for the last almost 5 years now. So it's been an unusual journey, I guess, is a
Yeah.
fair statement. But that's the short version.
Right. So in those in those times where it was like, hey, we're gonna get started. So like, the 99 2000, right? And then
Yeah.
that crash happens, and so you're kind of looking around like, that IBM job's looking like really good right now. Like, what's
There were
that?
4 wives, David. There were 4 wives saying that to the 4 of us. Like, can you guys get your IBM jobs back?
Well, yeah, well, that's kind of where I'm going, right? What were some of those? I mean, like, what was that like? What were some of those conversations? And what kind of got all of you through that point to go, no, hey, like, we're gonna keep pushing on, right? Because I think a lot of people that want to jump into entrepreneurship, even now, right?
Yep.
It's we hear the stories and we read the books, and everybody gets excited about it, right? And you see
Yeah.
the valuations and all these things or whatever, but there's a lot of like, there's a lot of long days and long nights in there, right? Where like you really don't know what's going to happen next, and you kind of have to have some people like to say grit, but I like to get into deeper than that, right? But you got to have like some real conversations and some values that kind of stick you to going through. And so I'm interested to hear what some of those were to kind of get you guys through that.
No, that's a really good question. I think, David, there's a couple things there I'd say. One is to kind of summarize the whole experience in reverse. I heard this along the way, and I just thought it was great, and I repeated it. It wasn't my original phrase. Somebody said, "This is not as easy as we've made it look." Like sometimes people stand back and go, "Wow, what a fun journey! You built a company, it got funded, it got bought, or you went public." It's like, yeah, I always say that's like looking at the stock market graph or something. If you stand way back, the stock market is up and to the right. When you
Right.
zoom in, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, right, like we're going through lately. and so at some level, we had enough good counsel. I had enough good counsel that we knew it wasn't smoothing up and to the right. There was going to be some bumps, but
Right.
nobody can quite prepare you for what kind of bumps and the nature of those bumps. So what I always focus on is, you do want to make sure you're getting into the boat, the little lifeboat. We always call it a little lifeboat when you're first getting started trying to build a big ship. But early on, it's a little lifeboat. You want to really feel good about the people you get in the lifeboat with.
Right.
Whatever else is true, there's going to be some hard times, and you need to feel very good about that core team. And I emphasize a team. I think there's a mythology of like the lone entrepreneur or something like. In real life, almost every great company is built by a team of at least two, usually more than two.
Right.
Like there's a core team, and that's the band of brothers thing or something. And I mean that, figuratively. One of my band of brothers was a female, but like just, a group of people you totally trust, you respect their skills and abilities. They are in this for the long haul. So back to your point in the beginning of Wave Set, there was the when the bubble burst, and we had to look at each other and go, "We still good? Yeah, we're still good. Like, let's do this." We didn't really consider running back to our corporate jobs. Not sure it was really an option at that point, but could have gone to some other corporate job, I guess.
Right.
But I think at that point we were all like, "No, we're going to give this a shot." Like we got enough. We had, I think, at that point a commitment of seed money that we knew we could get a couple of years to kind of build something and get it going.
Right.
And we thought, well, that's still, we were pretty sure at that point we had a pretty good idea of where there was some market opportunity. Let's keep going. So there was the look around before you start, make sure that's a group of people you want in the boat with you. And then I guess you've heard me give this talk. I'll be real brief, but the other part of getting something off the ground is be very careful not to just get together with a group of people and dream something up and go, let's go do that. I'm such a proponent of find a market need, which takes some work, right? Go
Yeah.
talk to people, interview potential customers, whatever. Get a real sense of some unmet or underserved need in the market, and then go, okay, I bet we could do that better.
Right.
That's really what we did. We sort of probed around. We didn't really know exactly. We knew we were going to go in B2B tech, but we didn't even know exactly where within that range we'd land. But we kind of probed around, started to hear some stuff, dug a little deeper, and finally had a pretty clear idea of where we knew we wanted to get started, because we were pretty sure that current customers didn't have a good answer for that. Or potential customers didn't have a good answer. And when we set out to build it, then if we did a good job, we would likely get a good response. And that's exactly how it went. And that's not a foolproof success thing, but it certainly increases your odds of success. One last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up on this point, David, is the other thing along that line was, this was so great. Somebody once said to me, look, fundamentally, one of the riskiest things you can do in business is start a business from scratch, right? Just super risky, right?
Right.
So once you take the fundamental decision of that risky decision of starting a business, like everything else is about how to mitigate risk. How do you mitigate risk? You get a great team, you get some good funding, you figure out exactly a problem that's not being well solved. Like you do a bunch of other things that says it could still get screwed up, but at least I've increased the likelihood of success because I did a bunch of other smart things. I talk about a lot of that stuff in my book, but anyways, that's a big theory. A big part of the theory for me is if you're going to start something, get a great team, do some real digging to figure out what's going to potentially win in the market. Now go get started.
Right. Yeah, and that's it's so crucial. And I learned that for me, like later on in life, right? I hated sales, I hated marketing. Because I was an engineer, right? So I was like, you guys, like whatever. Like I'll just like as long as
Necessary evil.
Right?
Sales and marketing, necessary evil.
Right, necessary evil. Like, yeah, those guys, like, we'll just code a great product and everything will be fine. And since then, right, haven't failed at a software company, but then just also like grown and done biz dev and alliance and things like that. Like I realize how important that is, right? Because you can have the greatest product in the world, and if nobody knows about it, nobody knows how to use it, like then it doesn't, it's just gonna sit there, right?
Okay.
And so it might as well be like anything else that people, because people just collect stuff, right? And it happens in businesses too. It's like, hey, let's get the software, great, we'll implement it, sure, and it'll just sit on the shelf, just like the bottles of whatever that people have and collect and things like that that they're going to use, right? If you're like my mother, like the gifts that she buys off of QVC that says these will make great gifts, and it's like, okay, sure, mom. So there's an entire closet full of Christmas gifts for every Christmas from here until whenever, because she just loves QVC. But anyway, but the point is, like, it does make sense to kind of know like do that pre-research first, right? Okay, what problem are you going to solve? Like what does the market think about this problem? And is there in that market, in that niche, like who are you really going to? Because then you have the beautiful, if you do it right, like you have customers before you even have a product,
Right.
which is great, right? And so then you can start to do your MVPs and all those things of that nature. So
Exactly.
awesome. So if you were to take, if we had a time machine, right? And we could go back and go grab, 1999, 2000 mark, and bring him back, and then sit the two of you down, right? What are some of the things that you would look back at your younger self and say, like, hey, maybe be this or this or do these things, and then how have you changed over then? Like, how has this journey kind of changed you? What principles have you picked up that you maybe didn't have, or like perspectives that you didn't have then versus now, being the well-seasoned accidental CEO or entrepreneur?
Well-seasoned accidental entrepreneurial CEO. It's a fair question. I've gotten it a few times. Honestly, I should have a really crisp, cool answer by now, and I really don't, sadly. Well, a couple thoughts come to mind, right? One is, this is an important point, David. I was 38, and my colleagues were between, I think, 35 and 40 when we started. So we were, there's so many 20-something startup guys. That's awesome and high energy young entrepreneurs, but there's sometimes a danger of a really young entrepreneurial team just not knowing what they don't know because they haven't even been in the business world that long, right? We were reasonably seasoned business people, right? 15 to 20 years in the business world. So we hadn't been like super successful entrepreneurs before, or really, I mean, we were pretty senior execs. We were like VPs and directors at Tivoli by then, but so we had some business seasoning. That's sort of point one. So we knew some stuff, but I'll explain in a minute. We had some more to learn. But I think we had some business experience. We had some managerial experience. We'd led teams. But I think as I look back on it, what would I tell that younger self? One is be super careful, and we tried to be, but in retrospect, boy, it still wasn't perfect. Be super careful about that core founding and early team you build, but also recognize that the kinds of people you need in some of those early skills or early days aren't always going to be the right people for later. And I had this mindset, like, great people are great. If you want them, you get them, you hold on to them forever. And now I've actually got a different view that says, people often, not always, but often have kind of a sweet spot. They're really great in that early stage, a lot of white space, not a lot of rules, not a lot of policies, figured out as you go. There are certain kind of people that are awesome there. But you take that kind of a person and you put them in a bigger structured company and they create a lot of havoc. Right? It's like, wow, man, no, stop. What are you doing? Right. But if you bring those super structured big company, and we saw this a lot in that bubble period, like you being a big structured company person and you put them in that early stage company without a lot of structure, they panic, they freak, they don't know what to do. So that was a great lesson for me that I didn't really understand at the time we're getting started. Like, there's not like good and bad people, like good marketer, bad marketer, whatever. There's people that kind of fit at various points in a company's life cycle. And so learning how to kind of assess that, getting people to be honest about their own skills and or preference, that's something I learned. I'd say the other thing I look back on, and this sounds harsh, but I don't mean it to be, like, when something's not working, you try to fix it and then you don't keep trying to fix it. You like, this might not be a good idea. And this isn't with people who are unethical or bad and you should just get them out immediately if you figure that out, right? But like someone who's effective, but if for whatever reason isn't clicking, or for whatever reason they're not totally satisfied and you can't quite find a way to make it work. I used to kind of feel like, not 2 tries, but 10 tries. Like, we've got to figure out, this is a great person, we got to make it work. And there's just a line there that it's not, I can't define it, but like, try to make it work, but then sometimes don't hold on too long, trying to make it work. And that's true for both the leadership or the managers and the team. Like, just kind of acknowledge the world is big and the world's like, literally, I've had people go away and come back because they chased something that made sense and that was great. And then they decided that wasn't as good now and they wanted to come back and there was a good place, right? Like, I just learned to like, not kind of almost that originally it was like that mafia loyalty, like you're with me or else you're dead to me, And I just learned that's just a bad way to think. And there's still a lot of that in the world, but it's not a great way to think. I'd say that was a learning from that era. Gosh, is there anything else I would tell my younger self? I would tell my younger self, be really happy you have dark hair and more of it, because it's not going to last. But no, that's it, David. I think that was probably the biggest things that came to mind.
Okay. No, that's awesome, and it's I love the thought there of like the life cycle, right?
Yeah,
I'll use the identity terms, right? But the life cycle of a business, right? Because
yeah,
it does change and grow, and like anything else, right? It's almost like humans, right? Like toddlers, teenagers,
yep,
adults, like they're all
exactly.
different, and it takes a different temperament at each state and age of where they're at. It's the same thing with a business, right? So
Right
somebody in
on.
an early stage business where there's not a lot of rules, and you kind of need some of those like just creative ideas and pushing
Yeah,
is awesome. But when you start to get more structure, right? Sometimes that's not as good because it goes back to the saying, right? You can do something really fast by yourself,
hmm,
but you can do things scale even further with a team, right? And knowing that difference, right? And
yeah,
how to figure out where the business is and apply what you need there. I think that's the a part that in my travels and talking to people and different entrepreneurs, right? That's the part that sometimes they struggle with or don't
yeah,
quite get. And the more successful companies kind of, I would say, figure it out because it's really that it is figuring out. I don't think there's a science to it, right? You
yeah,
just kind of go from there. I would say that
mm,
what I loved about and I'm I'm absolutely positive it's still there at SailPoint now was the values of just like you kind of start with the people first, right? And
yeah,
and just saying, okay, look, you have the core values, you have people. It's like if you find good people, right? Just period. Okay, this is a good
hmm,
person. Like just good people, they want to do things great. Now we can apply to those problems. And if you're always people centric,
yep,
then you just kind of figure it out. Like you figure out a way. It's like what's the best thing to do for this person? What's the best thing to do, for them? And then therefore, if they're doing the right thing, they're going to do the best thing for the company. And it kind of like all that will continue to kind of circle around each other. For the most part, right? You're always going to have
yeah,
the exceptions, and then sometimes things just don't work, and you say, okay, that's fine. But I think it's been very interesting these last, I'll probably say 10 years to see more companies look at that and adopt
mm,
that kind of like people
yeah,
first mentality, but and not just like a slogan, but like really like go into it and go, okay, no, like we really want to create a company where our people love coming here and our people love what they do because that passion comes out in everything, and then it just makes that the smoothness of the company that much better.
yeah. It's I mentioned I kind of wrote this book about some of what I think I've learned along the way, and I put one. There's not that many chapters in there that are controversial. I think one of them that's kind of controversial is it's right on what you're talking about. I called it values, then vision. Right. I think the common thought is, what's the vision? Where's this company want to go? What are we trying to do in the world or in the market or whatever? And now let's go find the people that can help us achieve our vision. And I kind of said, no, like you said, values, then vision. Like first find the kind of people that you trust, can work with, respect. Now, sure, there's got to be some skill match. It's not
Right.
that random, right? But that idea that your values are actually more central because your vision or what you're focused on I can change, right? I mean, anybody that thinks Apple 30 years ago knew they would be doing today what they're doing just is full of crap, right?
Right.
They didn't in the 90s or 80s when they got started with Jobs and Washington, they didn't foresee iTunes, iPods, iPhones, iPad. No freaking way,
Right.
right? Like they just kept adapting brilliantly. They had some principles and core design and stuff like that, but like quite often over the course of a business, they pretty radically change what they're all about. But let me get another example that people don't even think about. It's an older 3M. I have some friends here in Austin from 3M. Like 3M is like Minnesota mining and manufacturing. Like, what does that company today have to do with mining? I don't think anything, right?
Right.
But like they're a values centric company that did incredibly well for a long time. I don't exactly know how well they're doing today, if I'm honest, but just that idea that the business can change what it's in some ways all about or what it, if you hire great people, like people with the core values, they're going to adapt and change and keep focused on doing business the right way, but adapt to different business opportunities over time, right? I just think that's just a very true point, but it's still not sort of commonly viewed, I think, commonly
Yeah.
held. People think, no, first you got to go figure out what are you going to be. It's like, figure out what you're going to be as you go, get the right people in the boat to start with, and then
Right.
go figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So different view.
Very different. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, let's go into the world of authorship, right? So,
Ah,
for those of you that don't know, Mark McLean is the author of a book. I believe it's titled "Joy and Success at Work." I have read it. I have read it. I did get my autograph. I think it was.
you
I
got your
just
autograph copy. You did.
I did get my autograph copy before I left. Made sure I get that. I was like, look, this is gonna be worth something one day. I'm just gonna have it here.
Matt is not so sure.
But no, I did read it, and I was one of the main reason I read it was because you and I both share love for Patrick Lencioni, right?
Hmm.
We've talked about that before. For those of you who don't know, Patrick Lencioni writes, um, with people who consider like business books, but his style of writing is really storytelling, right? And
Hmm.
that's kind of what I enjoy. And so there's always he tells these really good stories. There's always good values to learn from it. So I was like, all right, when I found out you're writing a book, I was like, okay, I can't wait to read it because I want to see like which way he went. And so I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a good read. I would recommend everybody out there. I'll put it in the description on the podcast that you guys can go check it out. But that walk me through kind of like that process, right? So
Mm,
did you wake up one day and it was like, hey Marge, I think I want to write a book. Marge is his wife, by the way.
thank you.
Please tell her I said hello.
I will do it. I'll do it.
Was it was it a thought that you had one day? Was it something that you had been thinking about for a while? And then what was that process like kind of getting started?
Oh boy. Yeah, I'll try to make this a short story too, David. No, did not wake up one day and think I want to write a book. Let's get that rumor killed. So the way the process worked was, I had written some blogs and articles, I guess I'll call them, for Forbes, and they approached me and or the marketing PR team, I can't remember, and said, hey, we like some of the, and by the way, a lot of people write articles for Forbes. That's not a very big deal. Not to diminish myself, I guess, too much, but there's a lot of those. But I guess some set of them, they like the content or the approach or whatever. Maybe they do some research on the person. I don't know. They contacted us, say, hey, would you ever be interested in doing a book? To your point, and I said, no, I have no time for that. Maybe when I'm retired, I'll write a book, but right now I don't have time for that. And here's the other part of it, David. I said, and by the way, don't you have to have like some really big idea and then like three supporting ideas and then four sub-supporting ideas per, like, so you get your 12 chapter business book, right? I'm like, I don't got that, right? Like, I don't have one brilliant breakthrough thought. And as great as Lencioni is at that, I am not a storyteller who could write a book that way. I tell some stories, but I don't think I could do what he does. And so they said, no, we have this idea. They hooked me up with this kind of ghostwriter. He's a great guy. I consider them an author assistant or something. Um, and he had this idea of mimicking another older book, 50-year-old book called Up the Organization. But with that guy, and this was in the 60s, instead of having like that 12 chapter business book, it was like 40 or 50 little short chapters. Well, he did that in the 60s, but today I said, oh, you just want me to write like a collection of blogs? Oh, I could do that. Like every chapter is like 1 to 3 pages and the ideas are pretty all over the map. There's a couple of buckets, right? But I'm like, oh, I could totally do that because I said I have thoughts on leadership. I have thoughts on marketing. I have thoughts on building a business like we just talked about. I have
Right.
thoughts on family and work-life balance. I said I got all kinds of thoughts. I could probably come up with a couple hundred pages of stuff if it's all those different kinds of topics. So that's what we did. And the process was kind of, with a writer assistant like that, he would interview me and we'd talk about stuff and then he'd write first drafts and he was very talented. They kind of found a guy that they thought would quote match my voice and he was really gifted. He would literally write stuff. I'm like, that's exactly how I would have said that. So he would come back and I joked that sometimes he'd get it like 95% right and other times like 60. It was never like usually way wrong. It was like, we kind of missed the I gotta. So I like to say I'm very comfortable that my name's on the book because I either wrote or edited every word. It's either my words initially or I tweaked it to what felt good that it was my words. And it was just a fun process. It wasn't that painful. And again, Forbes had this structure. It's actually a group called Advantage Media that kind of does the books under the Forbes brand. They also do books under their own brand. And it was just a fun process. But where you might be going, I'll cut off your next question. Be like, oh, that's fine. You're going to write another book? I'm like, no, that was like everything I got. I got to live like 20 more years. I don't have anything else to say.
Mark's like, I got nothing else. That was it.
That's all I got. I hope you enjoyed it. That's all I got. But it's been fun, and I'm kind of teasing. Of course, there's a few other things I have thoughts on, but it was a pretty wide ranging set of topics on business and life. Kind of, I wasn't trying to be a philosopher, but there's a bit in there about how to think about being a good leader, and that spills over into being a good person, husband, father,
Right.
family, colleague. So I tried to kind of touch on a wider range of stuff like that. By the way, I forgot to mention, I can't resist. The book is, as you said, Joy and Success at Work. The subtitle is Building Organizations That Don't Suck, parentheses, the life out of people. So it's kind of a little bit of a double entendre there, obviously, right? Building organizations that don't suck the life out of people. Well, that sounds like a good, noble thing to do. But kind of pause at suck, and it has another fun twist. Building organizations that don't suck. Yeah, my organization sucks. I don't like it here. So that was the we had a lot of fun with the title, honestly. So that was a fun twist.
I'm pretty sure. So how many how many revisions on the title did they have to go through before they
A
accepted
number, a number. I won't say if it's a large number or a small number, but a number.
Oh man. Okay. So it switches to the last questions, which now I can't remember what it was, so I'm just gonna make them up. Um, literally, seriously, man, I was like, all right, I'm gonna plan out these questions, I'm gonna have everything, and now I can't remember what it was. But I do want to ask about. Okay, let's do this. We're gonna do quick hitters.
Okay.
So, first thing that pops into your mind when I ask the question: favorite navigate moment. And you can say one of my talks. That's totally fine. That's an acceptable answer.
You and Kaiser emceeing for the first year, probably one of my favorite Navigate moments. For those who don't know, David is a large, kind of imposing looking African American man. Mike Kaiser, one of his best buddies, still, I believe, right? You guys are still
Yep.
pretty good pals. A very slender, um, academically looking kind of Caucasian man. So the two of you, amazing repartee, amazing ability to play off each other, and just the visual is half the fun. Like David and Mike, and it's just awesome, so fun, and both brilliant, both experts on identity, very fun up front. Yeah, just the first time you guys kicked it off, I'm like, whose idea was this? This is a great idea. So I love that.
So actually, I've got a story for you. Then it's on how this actually came to life.
Okay.
So I told Mike, I was like, hey, like, how many Navigate talks are you giving? We were going back and forth. He's I'm doing a couple. I was like, hey, we should host this thing. And he goes, yeah. He thought it was joking. He's like, we really should. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll do it. So then I sent an email to Juliet Rascalo, who was head of market at the time. And so I just lay out this whole thing. I just went for it. So I just sent her this long email. Like, I was like, imagine this, like the lights pull back and this, like, I went totally dramatic over the top with it. And so I sent it to Juliet thinking like, no way. Like, she's not going to go for this. Like, I was like, she's going to read this. She's going to laugh. She's going to go like, whatever. She sends me back an email, CC and Mike, I love it. Let's do it. And me and Mike are like, wait, what?
Wait, you're serious?
Like, she's going to let us do it? And then Mike, he calls me and goes, do what? I was like, read the rest of the email. He goes, you actually sent her that? I was like, yeah. He goes, well, what are we going to do? I was like, I don't know, but I guess we got to figure out how we're going to host Navigate now. And so that's kind of how it all came together.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And thankfully, we didn't let Juliet down there. But
no, it did not at all. It was quite fun.
It was actually one of those times where, I fully expected that to go nowhere. I literally thought she was just going to laugh and say, I don't know, something.
That's a lesson for all your listeners. Hey, give it a shot. You never know what's going to happen.
There you go. Give it a shot. Like, you never know. And go, like, if you're going to give it a shot, go all out. Like, I really wish, man.
Go big or go home.
Right. I really wish I could have saved that email, man. Like, I really went. It took me like 20 minutes to write that email. Like, I mean, I set the scene and everything. It was great. All right.
That's awesome.
Next one. Best piece of advice you've ever gotten.
It's so hard because I kind of think in buckets of life, right? I got some great husbanding advice. I got some great fathering advice. I got some great business advice. I'll keep it in kind of the business realm. Great piece of advice from one of my mentor guys when I was a very young little SE and then later salesman at IBM in my 20s. Ed Kazmar, he's long passed. Ed said, you should probably spend about 90 to 95% of your time on your job and about 5 to 10% thinking about your career. And that turned out to be really, really wise. And what do I mean by that? So, and I cover this in the book too, I think. Like, you can spend 100% of the time on your job and do an excellent job, but maybe what you do is just kind of paint yourself into that guy is awesome at that thing, but nobody can envision you doing anything else because you're just awesome at that thing because that's all you ever focus on. And then another extreme might be 50-50. Where like you spend half your time on your job and half your time you're out looking for the next thing in your career and meeting people. And then people get frustrated because you're not really doing your job. You're like, dude, you got to spend more than half your time on your job. And so I thought that was a great kind of mental picture of like the great super majority of your time, do an excellent job, get better at your job, learned all that, but always be thinking about where could I be going or where should I be going. That involves, learning, reading. It involves meeting and networking. Just some not tiny, but some smaller fraction of your time thinking about where you want to go and how do you get there, and talking with people about how to help you get there. But the great bulk of your time doing really great at what you're doing now. And I just thought I've since I was young then, and since I've seen a lot of people get that wrong, right? Either those extremes, or they do great at their job but never think about their career, or they spend a bunch of time working on their next thing and then they fail at their current thing. So it's like getting that right, pretty sound advice.
Okay. Favorite place you've traveled to?
Oh boy, probably Paris. I don't want to sound like hoity-toity fancy. I've been there twice with my wife. Both times when we were younger. We haven't been in a number of years. I'm sorry, we went once later, once we had much older kids, actually. But twice when our kids were little on a business trip where I could extend it over. Both times in the spring, and the proverbial like Paris in the spring. We caught like perfect spring weather, 70 degrees, sunny, light breeze, and walking all around kind of the old towns or old city of Paris and all that, the Louvre and all of the stuff. It's just like magic, right? And I remember just thinking, this is magic. But I mean, we've been a lot of other places since then. We're not like hardcore travelers, but just the proverbial Paris in the springtime, kind of awesome.
All right. I still haven't been. I want to go because I'm a
It's
big
pretty
wine
cool.
so I will. It's been on the list for a while to go.
What's your favorite? I'll flip it back at you. So far, then, what's your favorite?
Sydney, Australia.
Oh, see that's about the second or third on my list, dude. So very cool. I'm with you on that.
Hands down, man.
It's awesome.
Everybody that's close to me knows. They're like, look, if he just ever winds up missing and doesn't answer his phone, like we know where he went. Like because I talk about it I love that place so
It's
much.
very
I
beautiful.
was like, and I just get fed up and I disappear.
Whoosh.
Real-
Well, these
the
days,
real-
if you go down there, you can't come back for like 2 years. So if you go, make sure you're
Exactly. I'm like, now's like the perfect time to go. He's just like, oh, okay, guys, sorry. I want to come back, but I can't. I'm stuck on this island. I do. No, I love Sydney. Shout out to all my Australian friends and followers because it is, yeah, it's the closest thing to, for me, especially Sydney being close to the water. That city feel, like the people there, the culture is really cool. Like I just love Australia.
Awesome. It's all in.
So I think that'll be number one for a while. I still have not made it to Japan, and I still haven't made it to. There's a couple of countries in Africa that I want to get to that I haven't gone yet. So we'll see after I make those trips.
Okay.
If Sydney's still
All right.
number one, but right now that's where it's at.
That's it.
Okay, so we are coming up on the end of the episode. So now everybody that's followed this podcast, they all know what's coming up. It is their favorite segment. Now, usually, and I know, like I promised everybody that in season 3 I would get back to the cocktails. Mark and I actually talked about it right before we started. I was like, look, man, it's kind of there, but it's not. And it depends on the timing. But this time we didn't have cocktails. But I will get back to that, I promise, in this season. But this next segment we call affectionately The Last Sip, and it's coming up right after this. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the C3 Podcast. And right now, we got some special shout outs. Now, for my day ones out there, look, we thank you for joining up to the Ebony Ascent platform. And we promised you that as part of being part of the Day Ones crew, you would get shout outs across our platform. And so here we go. We got some Day One crew shout outs we're going to give you guys. Shout out to Kenneth Baskerville. Thank you for signing up and becoming a Day One. We got Kanika Olakanye. Thanks so much for being a Day One. And Kanika, holla at me. Make sure that I got that last name right. Hit us up. Let us know we got it right. We got Tanisha Goodridge. Thank you so much for being a Day One. Emmanuel Morris, Tony and Julie, Paul Abraham, Carlene Randolph. Thank all of you so much for signing up, being part of the Day One's crew with us, rolling with us here at Ebony Ascent. Make sure you're engaging with us. Hit us up. Let us know if you're liking the content. What are the content you want to see? We got a couple more, so let's get them in. David Rhodes, appreciate you. Ayelet Penrod, Joe Gottlieb, Aubrey Turner. All of you guys, thank you so much for being Day Ones, riding with us on this journey. Make sure to keep subscribing to the platform. Keep checking out the content. Let us know what you want to hear. Let us know what you like and you don't like. We'll see you guys at the next break. Take care. The last tip. So I end every single podcast with this question, and I always try and like spring it on my guests because I like them to kind of actually think about it.
Mm.
But you did kind of get this early, so you kind of cheating a little
I
bit.
should have some thoughts theoretically.
But so with the last tip, what I like to ask every guest is, what do you want your legacy to be?
It's a very deep question, David.
It is.
I did see that a couple of days ago. Just full disclosure to your audience. Now, to be fair, I've had a really busy couple of days, so I haven't had a lot of time to think about it. But I've thought about it generally. Again, it's hard not to answer that question from a few different dimensions, right? On
Right.
the one hand, there's because I've ended up spending a large chunk of my career at this one company, kind of from its inception to kind of a larger scale than I ever imagined it might get to. That's certainly something that is part of that answer of leaving a legacy of having built a solid, high performing, quote unquote, successful business. But I would argue, hopefully, I'd get affirmation from our colleagues on this the right way, right? Like treating people well, operating with integrity, treating our customers well, being truthful, standing up with our values. I'm quote proud. I hate to use the word proud much, but I'm proud of the way we built this company, and I think it's been a great honor to be a part of it for this whole run. So that's certainly part of the answer, you know. But again, realistically, 100 years from now, I doubt SailPoint's around. Who knows what's happening 100 years from now, right? So that's one version of legacy. It's hard not to, as a back to my wife, who you know, David. She is currently in Birmingham, Alabama, not far from you, with our recently born seventh grandchild. Um,
Congratulations.
so it's hard when you get to this stage of life with kids and now grandkids. It's hard not to think about that
Right.
legacy of wanting to pour into your kids and then now pour into their kids to help them get on a great trajectory as people, right? That's career and who they are as people and family and all those things. I suppose in some ways though, if I could kind of wrap a bow around all of that, I think I'm a strong faith person. You and I've talked about that, and I have strong belief in faith, and I feel like we're sort of accountable not just for now, but maybe for a long time beyond understanding and eternity. And therefore, I want to leave in such a way that I feel like I've honored what God calls me to do. And I think a lot of that is just loving people well, right? Just how do I treat people? Jesus said, love, treat people the way you like to be treated. Am I treating people the way they'd like to be treated? Am I honoring them? Am I respecting them? Am I enjoying them? I feel like if I can leave people thinking, well, that I felt good when I was around Mark because he treated me well and he was fun and he was professional or he was and creative. I don't know. I want to do things that make people feel good about themselves because I think when then they can go be their best self, to sound a little trite, but help them discover who they're meant to be, who they're designed to be, and go achieve that. And if I can do that with more people because I have a little broader influence now, that's a great thing. If I can kind of touch this people, this generation, they can then maybe touch others with how to build a business, how to build a family, how to keep your head on straight and not get full of yourself, all those things. I think that's a great thing I could look back on because yeah, this company won't last forever. I won't last forever in this life. So I'm kind of realistic about what I think I can impact while I'm here, and if I can leave people feeling better than they were before, then that's a good thing.
All right. that's a, that's an awesome legacy to have, and I can speak firsthand and say that you're well on your way. There's not too many people that I've run into that have had the chance to kind of get to know you like I have, or just have some conversations with you.
Mm.
I don't all walk away kind of saying the same thing. It's like I like that guy. It's like I know I didn't want to, but he's really nice. I'm just
I
kidding.
think
But no, like it's just there is a which a couple of us have dubbed like the Mark McClain effect, right? There is just you get that genuineness from you, like when you talk to you, and it's like, hey, like I feel like even whether it's being an employee or not, like you just feel like, okay, hey, this guy's gonna shoot straight with me, like, and he's gonna authentically tell me something that like what he believes, and whether or not it could be like what I want to hear or not want to hear or whatever it is. And
yeah.
so because of that like authenticity, right, I think it helped permeate a lot through SailPoint. Obviously can't speak to the way it is now, but I know the time that I was there to where everybody felt that way. Then it's like, well,
Mhm.
this is how Mark is, so then I'm going to be this way when
Yeah.
somebody new comes on or this, that, or whatever. And so I definitely I can say from that experience, I definitely see it. Like I see it in the people that that you meet and that and what they take away from that. and how
Yeah.
I get to grow. So that's pretty awesome. And so, you know, keep at it. I'm so glad that I got a chance to meet you, work at SailPoint, and spend the time there, and really just kind of make our relationships one of the relationships that I always take from that, right?
Yeah.
That I can look back on and be like, man, that was just it was just super cool, and learned a lot from you indirectly and some directly, just kind of watching how you interacted and kind of grew that company, and
Mm.
sometimes made me want to check and say, okay, what type of person am I being, right? Like, not necessarily what would Mark McClain do. I'm not saying that,
No, no.
uh, but just to like you can always you can always learn something
Yeah.
when you're open to it. And so appreciate that. Appreciate you coming on the pod.
Yeah.
And
Fun.
yeah,
Thanks for saying that. Appreciate that. It's always good to know it's kind of getting through, for lack of a better term, like you think you're trying to lead in a certain way, and you hope people are picking up on it and reflecting it. But yeah, look, David, you were great to have when you were there, and obviously we left on a very positive note because here I am on your podcast. But no, I that's what I love. I love people, right? And that's what's fun about building a business and getting to work with a lot of people over all these years, just meeting great people and having fun things to do together and all that, just like, well, gosh, if I'm going to do stuff, I'd rather be around a bunch of people working on interesting things and helping them achieve success, and hopefully helping them lead a successful life of, a life where they have friends and colleagues and as you may remember, when I interviewed people way back in the day, one of the questions I almost always asked was, what do you like to do for fun outside of work? like I want to know the person joining SailPoint was not somebody who like just lived for work. I'm like, if you just live for work, you're probably not gonna like it here. Like, I don't live for work, and I'm the founder. Like, it's like, it's important to have a life.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that's fun to hear. Well, appreciate it. Go forth and do likewise. Go build something cool. You're building this little communication thing here. Let's get it going. This is fun.
Yeah, we've been putting this together for well, I mean, this podcast has been going, this is the third season,
Right.
and then we've got a media company behind it, and I've started to kind of put together a team. So it's funny, as you were kind of going through that and talking to some of the things, I'm just like, yeah, that okay. I was like, then I was thinking, oh, we didn't do that. I was like, I might want to talk to the team about that. But it's been fun so far. Like
Yeah.
this ride, just kind of putting this together, and having people that I do trust and that I do respect and that can be that input. And it's been super cool, right? It's a little different. We're coming into it as more of a passion thing than anything else, and we'll
Yep.
see what it turns into after that. But it's been super fun. A little frustrating at times, but
Like we
you know.
said, back up. It looks kind of smooth. Get close. Little more
Exactly.
jagged. Little more jagged.
Yeah. All right. So
I enjoyed it.
thanks again, Marks. Everybody else, we're going to be signing off. You guys know what it is. To the next cocktail, to the next conversation. Stay safe out there.